Ashley Heidemann from JD Advising, and in this session we're going to talk about unilateral mistake. Unilateral mistake actually isn't that tricky, but people get confused pretty easily if they don't memorize the elements. So let's talk about the law, and then I'll give you some examples of what would qualify as a unilateral mistake and what wouldn't. And I'll also tell you how this is often tested, because it seems to always be tested in the same way. So if you see it once, hopefully you'll recognize the same pattern in other questions that you see. So a contract is voidable. Basically, one party can ask for the court to rescind or undo the contract if one party was mistaken about a fact and the other party knew or had a reason to know about the mistake. So it's a unilateral, uni means one, it's a one-sided mistake, okay? One person's mistaken about the fact and the other party knows or has reason to know about the mistake. This almost always comes up with bidding situations because it lays out the facts so clearly for the person who's answering the question. So for example, let's just say that a general contractor is asking for bids from subcontractors. Okay, the general contractor wants to build a big construction site, a big building, and they're asking for bids. So every subcontractor submits a bid between $85,000 and $95,000. Maybe they get 10 bids, and they're all between that range. And the general contractor decides to accept one subcontractor's bid for $85,000. So great, general contractor accepts the bid. Then the subcontractor later realizes that there is an error in calculation and that his bid actually should have been for $90,000. So that subcontractor made a mistake of fact because they had an error in their calculations. So can the subcontractor get out of this contract? Can they ask for rescission? Can they ask to undo the contract that's been made? Well, let's look at the law. A contract is voidable if one party was mistaken about a fact, and here the subcontractor was mistaken because they made an error in calculation. So their bid should have been $90,000, it was only $85,000. But did the other party know or have reason to know about that? There's no fact saying that the other party knew, the general contractor actually knew there was an error. Did they have reason to know? And the answer here is no, because all of their bids were between $85,000 and $95,000. So they had no reason to know that the subcontractor made an error in calculation. The subcontractor's bid was on par with everybody else's bid. So the subcontractor is going to be bound by that, and even though they made a mistake, it's not going to qualify as a unilateral mistake under the law. And you can think about the policy reasons for that. It would be unfair if the general contractor, who acted reasonably, they got a bunch of bids and they accepted the lowest one, but the lowest one was still within the range of the other bids. Why would we punish that general contractor? They didn't know the subcontractor was mistaken. They didn't have reason to know. So this is going to fall on the subcontractor because the subcontractor was the one that made a mistake and the other party acted completely innocently. Now, what if we change the facts, though, and the new subcontractor submits his bid for $40,000, okay? All the other bids were between $85,000 and $95,000. And the general contractor says, wow, $40,000, and they quickly accept the bid, okay? So we got a contract now. And then the subcontractor realizes, whoops, I made an error in calculation. They go back to the general contractor. They say, we got to undo this. I made an error. My bid was way too low. It shouldn't have been $40,000. Will the subcontractor succeed under this theory of unilateral mistake? And again, let's look at the elements. One party was mistaken about a fact, and here the subcontractor was mistaken when he made his calculations, and the other party knew or had reason to know of the mistake. Even if the general contractor didn't know of the mistake, they probably had reason to know if all the other bids were between $85,000 and $95,000 and this subcontractor's bid was $40,000. They should have known something was up. So in this case, the subcontractor will succeed and will be able to rescind that contract and basically undo it. This case actually, there was a case involving the Pentagon in 1950 where the Pentagon asked for bids, and they received 10 bids, which were all between $140 and $150 million. And then they got one for $43 million. They quickly accepted it, and then the person who was making the bid realized their error, and the court held that party could rescind their contract, because the Pentagon, should have known that was an error. If all the other bids were between 140 and 150 million, and then they get this bid for 43 million. So this is how you'll see it tested. It's usually with bidding situations because it's the easiest way to test this issue. One thing I want to point out, because some students get confused about this, is the party has to be mistaken about a fact, not the value. For example, when I was about, I want to say maybe 10 or 11 years old, me and my sisters, who were the same age, and my dad, we had this weird hobby where we would collect Morgan dollars, okay? Morgan dollars are these coins, they're dollar coins. They were minted in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And we were just strangely obsessed with Morgan dollars. We'd go to coin shows. But what we did was we read all about them. So we knew if there were certain defects in the coin, like let's say one of the eagles was missing a tail feather or something, that coin would be worth a lot more. So we would study these defects, and then we'd go to these coin shows, and we would try to buy these coins that were worth more than the person realized that was selling it, okay? So me and my sisters and dad, we had this code word where we would say like, oh, that coin's shiny, I want that one. And if we said a coin was shiny, it meant there was some secret defect that the owner didn't really realize made the coin worth more than they were selling it for. So an owner could have a coin worth, we'd buy it for $50 and it would really be worth $1,000, okay, because of the defect. The owner didn't realize that increased the value. If that was the case, like let's say we did that, me and my sisters, 10 years old, we go to this coin show. One of us recognizes that this coin has some kind of defect that makes it worth a lot more than it's being sold for. So we buy the coin for $50. We know it's worth more, and it's actually worth $1,000. Can that person who sold the coin come back and say, I made a unilateral mistake, didn't realize the coin was worth that much, we need to rescind this deal? And the answer in this case is no, because this was a mistake as to the value of the coin. We all knew what coin was being sold. The owner of the coin handed over the coin. We all knew what was being sold. The owner just didn't understand the true value of the coin, versus we did understand the true value of the coin. So the owner could not get out of that contract under a theory of unilateral mistake, because this was not a mistake of fact. And the rule says one party must be mistaken about a fact. Here it was just a mistake about the actual value of the coin. So I hope that makes sense. This is basically how you'll see unilateral mistake tested, typically with bidding situations, but occasionally you'll also see a question where a party is mistaken about the value, and just know that unilateral mistake does not apply if a party is simply mistaken about the value of a good.